previous lecture, we have started with the equity theory, okay, and we have discussed what is the main concepts of equity, and then we have discussed the referent comparisons, and we said that there are four choices, either self inside or self outside, in addition to others inside, others outside. In other words, we can compare ourselves to others, to other people inside the organization or outside the organization, or we can compare others who are working in the same organization with other people, whether inside or outside the organization. And after that also we have discussed the motivation to equity, and we said that there are two situations here. The first one, if there is equity, then individuals are more concerned to maintain the current situation. Now, to motivation to inequity, here we said that if there is inequity, usually employees are more concerned to change the situation in order to reduce tension. And to do so, there are 6 different alternatives here. The first one, either we are going to change the inputs. Here we are talking about the equation itself and how to deal with the components of the equation. Either we are going to change on inputs, or maybe we are going to change outcomes. Here we are talking about the components or the elements of inputs and outcomes. Or we are going to change our perception to self, or maybe we are going to change our perception to other. Now, in all those 4 cases, we are talking about the elements of the equation. Okay, so we are going to rethink those elements, and maybe we are going to do some changes in order, of course, if we are not satisfied with the situation. Now, there are other activities that individuals might do here, or mechanisms that individuals might consider. One of those is to change the referent person. Now, here we said that either we are going to compare ourselves to others inside or outside the organization, or others to inside and outside. Here we are talking about changing the reference, okay? If we feel that we are not satisfied with the conclusion or with the results, in order to rethink the situation again, we might change here the referent. The most radical mechanism I can say here is to leave the field. Here we are talking about either neglecting the situation, or sometimes maybe the individuals are going to think to transfer from one job to another job, or maybe sometimes even they might think to leave the situation itself. Here we are talking about a negative attitude which will result in some problems for the organization somehow, of course. Now, we are going to continue with the equity theory. Now, one of the most important issues which is related to equity theory is organizational justice. Now, when we talk about organizational justice, the more the employees feel that there is organizational justice, the more they are going to be convinced that there is equity in the organization. And of course, vice versa. If they feel that there is no organizational justice, this is an important indicator of unfairness or inequity inside the organization. Now, organizational justice, it is some sort of overall perception whether employees are treated fairly within the organization or not. Now, in order for employees to reach a judgment here whether there is organizational justice or not, usually there are 3 main dimensions that we cover as people. The first one, we call it distributive justice. Now, distributive justice, here we are talking about allocation of rewards. If I, as an individual working in the organization, feel that the rewards I am having is fair comparing to others what they are having, here we call this distributive justice. It means that the rewards are allocated fairly among different employees. Okay, of course, here usually we compare it to the performance that we are giving to the organization, and others what they are giving to the organization, and of course what rewards are received. So here we are talking about the allocation of rewards mainly. Now the second one is procedural justice. In procedural justice, here we are talking about the process or procedure used by the organization to allocate the rewards. Now first we are going to judge whether we are treated fairly in accordance to allocating the rewards. Now secondly, we are going to judge whether the process or the procedure itself, whether it is fair or not. Now the third one is interactional justice. Now interactional justice, here we are talking about whether employees perceive that their dignity is perceived or their dignity is assured in the organization, or management is treating the employees with respect, considering their dignity, and so on. So this we call interactional justice. Now all three are going to guide employees to judge whether there is organizational justice or not. Now sometimes, again, we are talking here about overall perception. Maybe the employees are going to find out that there is justice in two of those dimensions, and maybe in a third one there is no justice, we can say here. But again, we are talking about overall perception here, whether there is organizational justice or not. And here we are not talking about black and white. We are not talking about whether there is total justice or there is total injustice. No, here we are talking about level, or we are talking about a scale somehow, and employees, they are going to consider up to what extent there is justice or the opposite. Now, another theory that we need to discuss here, and it is part of contemporary theories of motivation, is the expectancy theory. Now, when you talk about the expectancy theory, here employees or individuals working within the organization, they are going to consider the outcomes and up to what extent those outcomes are appealing to the individuals. Now, when the outcomes are appealing to employees or individuals working in any organization, when the employees can consider the outcomes are appealing and when they are not going to do so, yes?
When they meet their expectations.
Okay, the theory itself, we call it expectancy theory. Here we are talking about the expectation, but when we expect that, which expectations that they expect to meet, yeah? Okay, and when we talk about the personal goals, we are talking about what here? We are talking about needs. Again, here we are talking up to what extent those outcomes, it is appealing when it is satisfying our needs. So here is the key issue when you talk about expectancy theory. Here we are talking about different stages. Before going through the definition, I like to go through the process itself. Okay. Now, in the expectancy theory, there are 4 main steps. And in between those 4 main steps, there are 3 main stages. Now, first, let us talk about the steps, okay, or the components, I can say here. The individual effort, and here we are talking about effort exerted by employees, individual performance, and here we are talking about the performance level itself, and the organizational reward, which should be given to according to the performance, and finally the personal goals. Now, here there are 3 main stages. It is like if employees are asking themselves questions, and if the answer was yes, then the employee is going to go to next step. If it is negative, then the employee is going to stop. And in simple words, employees are not going to exert effort unless, according to the expectancy theory, unless they find out that the outcomes are going to help them achieving their personal goals, or in other words, help them in satisfying their needs. Now, the first question usually is whether the effort that I am going to exert as an individual is going to help me to reach to the performance level required to achieve or to accomplish the assignment. Okay? So this is the first question. In this question, usually effort-performance relationship is identified. Now, if the relation here is positive, then the individual is going to ask him or herself the second question. Now, if not, the employee is going to neglect the situation. Why? Because there is no hope to satisfy the personal goals or to satisfy the needs. So the first question usually is whether the effort exerted by me is going to help me to reach the performance level needed to achieve the assignment. Again, if the answer is yes, we are going to consider the next stage. If not, we are going to neglect the situation. Now, the second question is to identify the performance reward relationship. Now, the question here is, if I reach the performance level, I am going to receive a reward or not. So the performance level that I can reach, here I need to identify whether it is satisfactory for the organization or not. If it is satisfactory or desired by the organization, then here there is an expectancy to receive the reward. Okay? If not, then, and again, maybe if the first question the answer was yes, and the second question the answer was no, again here the individual or the employee is going to neglect the situation. Why? Because if the employee can exert the effort, and this will help the employee to achieve or reach the performance level desired by the organization, but the reward is not satisfactory to the employee according to the performance and so on, then the employee here is going to neglect the situation. Now, the third stage is to identify the reward personal goals relationship. And here the individual is going to ask him or herself another question, whether this reward is going to satisfy my needs or it is going to help me to achieve my personal goals. If the answer is yes, then okay, we are going to start exerting effort to reach the performance level in order to have the reward to satisfy our needs. Now, if the final answer was negative, then we are going to neglect the situation. So, in order to go through the process, there must be three answers. Yes, the first, the second, the third. If any one of those or in any of those stages, if the answer was negative, then the employee here is going to neglect the situation because it is not expected to help the employee in achieving goals or in satisfying his or her needs. Okay, any questions till now? Now, in order to integrate the contemporary theories of motivation, okay, here we need to consider all those four stages. Okay, I'm not talking about the expectancy theory only here. I'm talking about all the theories that we have discussed. But here, the expectancy theory is helping us to find out that there are four main components which is very important in any situation. Employees need to exert effort. They must reach the performance level desired by the organization. Rewards must be given by organizations in order to satisfy their needs. Now, when you talk about abilities, perception, and so on, it is important when you talk about individual effort, when you talk about performance. Now, when you talk about rewards, here we are talking about, for example, even the relation between rewards and personal goals, it's not limited only to contemporary theories. Even if we want to talk about Maslow or all the needs-based theories, here we are talking about the relation between organizational goals and the rewards and the personal goals. Here we are talking about needs and different individual needs and how it is going to be satisfied through achieving different rewards or having different rewards. Now, the main idea here that we cannot separate not only the contemporary theories, even when we talk about the early theories of motivation or needs-based theories of motivation, we must deal with all those theories as a package. Why? Because this we have discussed earlier, that none of those theories is going to give us a comprehensive explanation about the the motivation itself, we need to go through all those theories. Some of those theories are going to cover certain areas and other theories are going to cover the remaining areas. So in order to have a comprehensive understanding of motivation, we need here to integrate all those theories and find out what is the relation and how those theories are complementing each other's, or how it is complementary to each others. Okay, last thing to discuss is global implications. Now, when you talk about motivation theories, it is usually culture bound. Culture bound, we mean here that it is highly affected by cultures, and there are differences from one culture to another. That's why when you talk about most of those theories, we cannot identify a universal application for all those theories. And when you talk even about Maslow hierarchy of needs theory, okay, order of those needs, it's not only that there is no universal standards. We said that among individuals there is no standards, and we said that there are a lot of weaknesses when we discuss that theories, especially when we talk about the hierarchy itself and the idea of full satisfaction and how it is arranged in a set order, and usually we do not deal with the same order. The same when we talk about McClellan's theory, and the same when you talk about the equity theory. There is no universal standards for those theories. Okay, usually the meaning of equity also, it is different from one culture to another, or from one community to another, and the same when you talk about other theories. The only exception here, and we cannot, we almost an exception, is the two factors theory. Herzberg theory, when we said that there are hygiene factors and there are motivational factors. Why? Because most people, they desire an interesting job, or we like to have an interesting job, and that's why we consider that there are some evidences. I said, almost there is some sort of acceptance here that when you talk about Herzberg theory, the two factors theory, the hygiene factors and the motivational factors, somehow there is, it is applicable regardless of the culture. Okay, but even when we talk about what are the components of the hygiene factors and the motivational factors, maybe there are going to be differences in level of those factors, but maybe not in, when you talk about the hygiene factors, we are talking about salary management and so on, but maybe we are not talking about the salary in figures. We are talking about the salary as a salary. We are not talking about the management, up to what extent this management is, for example, modern, or we are talking about advanced leadership styles. Here we are talking about something of relatively compared from one culture to another. But the factors itself, it is almost the same, but we are not talking about how those factors are available, or how it is used from one culture to another culture. Okay. Any questions? طيب، يعطيك العافية، شكرا. بدكم أوراق الامتحانات؟